I just got back from Morbius, the newest addition to Sony's Spider-Man universe, and the first one to not be a Venom movie. Well, that wasn't supposed to be the case. It was supposed to come out 2 years ago, but of course got pushed back just like everything else, and ended up being the third movie in the franchise, with a fourth one coming up on the way in January with Kraven the Hunter. So this movie, of course, follows the story of Michael Morbius, who tries to find a cure for his disease, and a disease his best friend also has, and he inadvertently becomes some sort of vampire. And he has to learn how to control his thirst for blood and these new abilities that he has created without hurting anybody and with the law on his tail. So, this movie has been getting ripped apart by critics. And if you know me, I don't give a crap what the critics think, especially after Eternals. I stopped caring. But this thing's all the way down at 16%. And yeah, that sounds bad, but there have been movies that I like that have gotten lower. Again, Max Steel has a 0%. I literally today just bought that freaking thing on Blu-ray, so that tells you how much I care about critics. Speaking of which, where is it? Back. Where'd it go? Oh, yeah, never mind. I misplaced my bag. I put it in my desk. I forgot. So, sorry about that. But yeah, so most people are been agreeing that it's not a very good film, like most critics at least. Audiences seem to be kind of split on it. And I checked the average score for the audiences. It's at a 3.7 out of 5. The average one for critics is 3.8 out of 10, but I digress. So it seems like most audiences are getting into it, much like the Venom movies, which are in the 80s on the audience score. So I wasn't really sure what to make of this movie, and the trailers... The trailers have been coming out for over 2 years now, and I've been seeing it for, every movie I've gone to recently. Every movie, like Uncharted, Batman, hell, I think Spider-Man No Way Home, I think Eternals had one as well. I think all the MCU films that came out last year had one as well. So, yeah, this movie's marketing has been pushing this movie as much as possible. And it's decent. It's decent. I thought it was okay. And so, basically, the best way I can sum this up is that if you like Venom, you'll probably get into this one too. It's very different. The Venom movies are extremely fun. And while many people had problems with that it's not what Venom is, because Venom's supposed to be a very tortured character, and they made him fun and jokey and stuff, it still worked for a lot of audiences. Audiences got into it. This movie is the dead opposite. It's very serious, and it actually goes through the process of him, struggling with this. So it's a very Jekyll and Hyde type of story. And I can get with either side of it. I like the fun and jokey movies, but I also like darker, serious movies. And I will say, problems I had with it coming out of the theater kind of vanquished after a while, kind of disappeared. Because one thing I thought when I was coming out of the theater, it was kind of boring at times, but thinking back on it, I don't remember being bored by this movie. I was actually very invested in the character of Michael Morbius. Jared Leto does a pretty good job with the role. I've never thought he was a great actor, but he does pretty decent in the film. I think all the actors are pretty good. The villain, played by Matt Smith, is very over the top. He's having a lot of fun with the movie, and I definitely get behind it. Reminded me a lot of Cletus Cassidy from Let There Be Carnage. So yeah, I had fun with him. He was clearly having a ball with this role. Morbius' partner, Martine, and the only reason I remember her name is because I always think about Gabriel Iglesias, Martine! So that's the only reason why I remember her name. And she does well enough. I like the character. I like how she's actively helping Michael try to come up with a way to defeat the villain, much like the Amazing Spider-Man films did with Gwen Stacy. My problem is that when they made them romantically involved, it kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, it was set up, but it still didn't feel earned. These two worked pretty well as friends. I bought their friendship. I bought the chemistry between most of these actors in this. But I did not buy them as a couple. And another thing, I bought Jared Leto and Matt Smith. I bought them as friends. It reminded me a lot of Andrew Garfield and Dane DeHaan in Amazing Spider-Man 2, where they act like they're old friends and they don't, and their friendship feels genuine. And that's like the only time Matt Smith actually like reins in his performance, which I like. Once he becomes a vampire, he goes way over the top, and it's fun. And I will say, there was a twist in the middle of this movie that I actually did not see coming. So it's no surprise that somebody close to Michael gets killed, and it's set up to look like it's Morbius during one of his blackouts. But then, not much later on, they don't try to drag out this mystery, which I like. It's revealed that it was Milo, which is Matt Smith's character, even though his real name's Lucius Crown, I think that's right, or Aloxius Crown, something like that. They just call him Milo. I don't know why. I haven't read any Morbius comics, so maybe that was explained at some point, but whatever, Milo, and said that he killed her. And that actually took me by surprise. I was actually surprised by that twist. And then the cops are, of course, going after Michael, and they do actually capture him at some point, which is cool. Like, they actually capture him. He, of course, breaks out, because he goes off to fight, because he figures out, very cleverly, that Milo has become a vampire. And he does it because he comes in with a cane, like, pretending he's still disabled, but walks out and leaves the cane there, and accidentally leaves the cane there. That was maybe he wanted him to find out. I'm not exactly sure. It's never made clear, but that was pretty well done. I like the writing for this movie is kind of bland overall. Like the story is coherent, it makes sense, but a lot of the dialogue is just kind of bland. The performances are like I said, the performances are good, but it doesn't make the dialogue any more interesting. Like, there is an exception though. It's like during his little training scene where when he figures out he has all these powers, he starts like testing himself. He starts figuring out how his powers work. He starts timing himself to see how long he can last without blood. This feels like how a real scientist would do things. After he figured out he would have these powers, he probably would go through these procedures. And I liked how realistically that was portrayed. The action is okay for the most part. The first fight on the boat where he just kills a bunch of people, that's in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler. It's a nice suspense scene. It's done pretty well. The first fight with Milo was pretty good. I like how you could see everything, and it was all done in one take. It was basically just a really short chase scene, but it was pretty cool. And like I said, it was all done in one take. I know it was all CGI, but it was still really well done. The final fight was kind of anticlimactic. It wasn't great. And he also beat him by controlling bats, which is okay, and then he injects him with poison. So, it was an interesting way to beat him. This movie does rip off Batman Begins, and I know other people have said this before, but I noticed it. Like, he steps into the big vat of bats he has. He steps in there, and the music sounded very similar to Batman Begins. And he just steps in there, just lets the bats fly around him. And again, like I said, the music sounded identical. I'm like, this sounds a lot like Batman Begins. And apparently other people thought the same thing, so it wasn't just me. And the special effects are kind of hit and miss. I like the sonar. I think that looks pretty cool. There's a weird kind of trail effect that kind of looks like Quicksilver's from Age of Ultron. And I saw a review that said it looked like it was trying to cover up bad effects. He's probably right. And it doesn't look terrible, but it looks kind of pointless. And yeah, it doesn't look the best. And the facial, the mocap for the vampires was originally going to be makeup, but apparently Jared Leto refused to do it, so they just went CGI. Wonder how bad those prosthetics must have looked if Jared Leto said no, since he was willing to get into heavy prosthetics for House of Gucci. So they must have looked pretty bad, so they just went the CGI route. Again, it doesn't look bad. It looks okay. So is this movie perfect? Hell no. There are problems. It is a bit dull. There's not a ton of flair to this movie. The ending is very anticlimactic. It just kind of stops. Like, the final fight, it's an okay enough fight. It's not very long. But it feels like there should have been another phase of this fight. It's like getting a boss fight, but where you fight them, and then there's always a second phase to it. but it feels like it was missing that second part. Maybe it was cut, because there was a lot cut from this movie. You can tell there are so many scenes from the trailers that were axed, and it shows. There are, much like Artemis Fowl, there are a lot of scenes that are in the trailers that are nowhere to be found. Even just shots from scenes that are in the movie are gone. Like, there's a training scene. I remember in the trailer, there was, like, him picking up some kind of, like, sarcophagus, I guess, where he was, like, picking it up, testing his strength. That's not in the movie. Him walking by the Spider-Man poster, the poster with Spider-Man on, saying murder on it, not in the film. The shot of Oscorp, not in the film. So, and then, there's only one thing in this movie that actually got me angry. And it was the 2 mid-credit scenes. I'm going to go into spoilers here. I'm going to say what these are, because I need to vent about these for a second. The first one is Adrian Toomes, played by Michael Keaton, the Spider-Man Homecoming one, appears in this world via the purple sky crap that was at the end of No Way Home. And this doesn't make sense. One, you can tell this was supposed to come out before No Way Home. They had to kind of scramble to make it make sense. I'm guessing this was originally supposed to be a variant, and it was changed because there's another scene of him like talking to Michael Morbius when he's like being sent when he's being put in a truck in his jail clothes. Is nowhere to be found. He just appears in the jail cell, and it doesn't make sense because it was established in No Way Home that the spell brought villains who knew Spider-Man's identity to that world. It created a giant plot hole with Electro, but other than that, it at least made sense. To my knowledge, none of the MCU villains were sent to other universes via reversing the spell. All the other characters went back to their respective universes, so why is he here? It's never explained, and if it were explained, I probably could have let it go. But I have a feeling this was supposed to be a variant, and they changed it because it came out after No Way Home. And then there's the second one, where Adrian Toomes, in a vulture suit, shows up to Michael Morbius to suggest they start a team. Setting up the Sinister Six, obviously. And one thing, where do you get the wings? Now, many people have been saying that the biggest theory going around is that the Venom and Morbius universe is the universe in which the Amazing Spider-Man exists. And there are several reasons why I think this could be valid. I'm not one who goes into those fan theories, stuff like that, but there is a possibility, because one, he said he was going to talk to Spider-Man when he was in the MCU, but then he was sent back. I have a feeling he would still try to as well. He would still go to talk to a Spider-Man. And then, in this movie, Toomes says, I don't know how I got here, I think it was the doing of Spider-Man. Morbius doesn't say who's Spider-Man, so he must know. And there's also the fact that I said this could take place in the Andrew Garfield world, because that's the only reason it would explain the wings. Because if you'll recall, at the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2, it showed Dr. Octopus's arms, the wings, and the Rhino suit. And I feel like that's where Oscorp was supposed to come into play here. That was where Toomes was supposed to get the wings from. And at least that would have explained it, but again, the shot of Oscorp isn't in the film. So, yeah, it's highly possible, but again, I'm not one to delve into those fan theories or anything, or try to validate them. And somebody else pointed this out to me, I did notice that something was off, but you could tell there was something else was supposed to be here, or at least someone else. Because the way he says it, he says, we should, a group of guys like us, we could do a lot of good. And he's like, I'm interested. It's just like, I'm interested. It's not like he has no qualms about the big-ass wings or anything, or this guy he's never met saying, oh, we should start a team. It's like, he's just, I'm interested. You could tell there was something else supposed to be here, and I didn't know. I noticed that something was off, but that makes a lot of sense. There was definitely a reshoot here. But yeah, overall, I still didn't mind the movie. I thought it was fun. It's pretty short. It's only an hour 44, so it'll be quick and breezy, just like that. I like a lot of stuff about it. There's plenty of stuff to make fun of in this movie. Don't get me wrong, but overall, it's still good, mindless fun. I'm gonna give Morbius a B-. I actually didn't mind it, and I'm gonna probably get ridiculed for it, but I don't care. This is my channel. I can say whatever the hell I want. So thank you all so much for watching. And what do you think of what did you think of Morbius? If you've seen it, did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you think it was okay like I did? And what are your thoughts on the Sony Spider-Man universe that's being developed? Because we're getting Kraven the Hunter in January. They've had a Black Cat movie that's been in development hell for almost a decade. And there are a lot of other movies that are apparently in development. So, and apparently they're setting up the Sinister Six. So, if we do get Amazing Spider-Man 3 like people are asking for, maybe that's where we'll see the Sinister Six. So, that's all I got for Morbius, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.